This Nuance Corner holiday special is brought to you by my friends at Bellesa. Stay tuned for more details about our massive giveaway. Happiest Season is a 2020 holiday movie that was co-written and directed by Clea Duvall of But I'm a Cheerleader fame. It got a lot of attention simply by right of being the first gay holiday movie to be distributed by a major studio, Sony. Though, again, 2020. A theatrical release wasn't possible, and so it was distributed instead on the streaming service Hulu, who told Variety that it then went on to be their most successful film premiere to date at that time, having the best viewership for any original film on the service in its opening weekend and attracting more new subscribers than any other previous feature title. Happiest Season was a huge deal not just in terms of gay audience success, but by regular, standard, though lockdown-impacted measures as well. And another thing it was certainly successful at doing, probably especially within its gay audience, was generating discourse. Lots and lots of discourse. There are so many different places a conversation about Happiest Season could go. I would feel remiss not to just take a moment to name that, yes, all of the expectations that get placed on movies like this, whether they are the first of their kind or the first to have major financial backing, can be a bit suffocating of any real enjoyment of a movie. I don't think that's fair. And I think that expectations and overly high standards can serve to disincentivize other queer storytellers from wanting to create, knowing that they may be judged against an entirely different rubric than some movie about straight people would ever be held to. I think queer storytellers deserve to have the opportunity to make cheesy or bad or corny movies if they want to, and I think to insist that every piece of queer cinema be perfect and unproblematic in addition to being groundbreaking gets us nowhere in terms of representation and our ability to see ourselves reflected in the stories we consume. So, with as much as Happiest Season frustrates me with some of the choices made in the film, I do want to just take a moment at the top to affirm that I am overall glad that the movie exists. If you like it, I think that's great. Good for you. I liked it well enough the first time I watched it, when the discourse around the film and its missed opportunities triggered my protective instinct, and I declared that a gay movie should not have to be all things to all people in order to be good or worth making. And I do largely still stand by that. I don't think that a gay movie should be held to harsher standards than a heterosexual one. I don't think all the decisions I might not love in a movie about queer people spells certain doom for later, better gay movies. But I also think, gay or not, movies should be good. I think they should do a good job at accomplishing what they set out to accomplish. And the more time that I spend with Happiest Season, the less I feel as though the movie pulled off what it wanted to pull off. So consider this a seasonal offshoot of my Is This Movie Feminist or Was I Just Told It Was series. Is this Christmas movie any good, or did I just really, really want it to be? I think that's a question worth asking, even if you're not going to be particularly happy with the conclusions I draw when I ask it. But first, a word from today's sponsor, my good friends at Bellesa. If you've already been here in the Nuance Corner for a while, then you already know how much I love Bellesa. They're a bi-woman company with a mission to empower everyone to embrace, explore, and celebrate their sexuality, which I think makes them a perfect fit for this channel. And I figured for this, the Happiest Season, I could tell you about some of my favorite toys they've sent me. For starters, this is the one we're giving away, and a favorite among my circles, the Rose toy. This one has gone viral on TikTok for good reason. It has 10 different modes and fits right in the palm of your hand to provide you with complete control of your pleasure. She's so cute, she's so discreet, and she can be yours with any purchase. Like, for example, if you purchased the Pebble. This one has both suction and vibration, both controlled independently, and it is ergonomically built to fit perfectly in your hand. It honestly just feels really nice to hold. Even nicer than that, though, there are no annoying pattern modes, something that I think makes it very clear that Bellesa is a bi-woman company. I can't believe how many vibrators I owned before I found someone who did not want to waste my time with a bunch of annoying settings I would never use. And you also wouldn't have to worry about annoying pattern modes if you order the Air Vibe. The Air Vibe gives you dual G-spot and clit stimulation, and it comes in the cutest and most discreet little carrying case. Look at this. It's waterproof, it's rechargeable, and it is so quiet, especially for how strong this thing is. Or you might want to go with my personal favorite, not just out of the lot, but out of the, again, many, many vibrators I have owned, the Thump. This one does it all. It vibrates, it suctions, and it thumps. This one was designed to be the de facto replacement for all external clit-stimulating vibes, and it uses Bellessa's improved pleasure jet technology. Like the other toys, you can control each function independently, and they work really well together if you feel like getting fancy. My favorite feature, though, is the innovative thump technology. I've never had or even seen another toy that does this, but the back of this pop grip here gives you these really natural but also really strong palpitations. I just really, really like this one. The shape of it also feels great in my hand. It is USB rechargeable in its case, it is waterproof, and like all of Bellessa's toys, it is made with premium body-safe silicone. And look how cute and discreet this case is. You could totally be hiding an extra set of glasses in there. Nobody would know. I would know, but most people would not know. I love Bellessa, and I'm so excited to be partnering with them again. If anything I've just told you about sounds like it might be a fun holiday present for yourself, I think you would have fun with them too. You can check out the link in my description to sign up for our giveaway, where everyone will receive a free Rose toy just like this one with their order. Thanks so much to Bellessa for sponsoring this video and so many others on the channel. Let's get back to the Christmas of it all. So on its face and by its marketing, Happiest season offers to be something I would really enjoy. I personally am extremely down for a gay holiday movie, and this one was promoted as if it were slightly more upbeat than it is. Not that I couldn't also be down for a somber, sad gay holiday movie, but a lot of the reviews I've read of this movie have pointed out feeling a bit of a bait and switch from the marketing compared to the movie itself. I will allow the trailer of this movie does give away the majority of the plot and its emotional beats. You would walk away from the trailer knowing that this is a movie, at least in part, about closeting and family trauma. In fact, the earliest take I ever posted to the internet about this movie was my surprise that people had watched a trailer that so explicitly promised a forced closeting plot, and came away from watching the movie so surprised that the main relationship in it was dysfunctional. But I will also allow that the way the trailer is cut together, with soft poppy music playing underneath it, isn't a really great way of conveying the tension and anxiety that this movie fosters in me when I actually engage with the story it's telling me. On IMDb, Happiest Season is summarized as a holiday romantic comedy that captures the range of emotions tied to wanting your family's acceptance, being true to yourself, and trying not to ruin Christmas. Alright, here's the first of many complaints I'm going to make in this video. I think romantic comedy as a categorization is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. First of all, while some scenes are meant to be comedic, it feels like such a stark minority of the runtime. But second of all, perhaps most chiefly, I do not think that this movie is romantic. At least not to me, it isn't. And there certainly could be a movie that was not romantic and not very comedic, and that was also not bad at doing what it was trying to do, that I would still like, if that movie did not describe itself as a romantic comedy. In fact, if it was presented to me in a vacuum, I think I would actually be really interested in a movie that wanted to explore the themes Happiest Season tries to explore in its not romantic, not comedy parts. Like, if I were presented with a version of the movie that was truly focusing on that, if those themes were borne out well, I could get down with that, but they're not, and I can't. And this told me that it was a romantic comedy. Except in order for me to buy something as a romantic comedy, I gotta be at least somewhat willing to root for the main couple in the film to be together. I have to think that their lives would both be better if they were a couple, and that is just not possible for me to do when I watch Happiest Season. So we're going to diverge off into other complaints, but for complaint number one, this is not a romantic comedy. To make sense, I need to tell you about the plot of this movie, okay? The movie begins with Abby, Kristen Stewart's character, and her girlfriend Harper wandering around looking at Christmas lights and having a romantic evening doing so. Carried away in this, the only scene in the movie with any real romance, I think, and after Abby has repeatedly said how much she is very fine with not celebrating Christmas, how she has to look after the animals she pet sits anyway, her girlfriend Harper invites her to come spend Christmas with her family, says how badly she wants to wake up together on Christmas morning. She is sure that this will overwrite Abby's apathy toward the holiday, and Abby not only agrees, but gets really excited about the prospect. However, by the time they wake up the next morning, they are on completely different pages. Abby is feeling festive now, listening to Christmas music, making breakfast, and saying how excited she is. And Harper immediately tries to back out of her invitation from the night before, but she declines to give any information on why, so they agree to go. But before they go, Abby has to get a friend to cover for her pet sitting duties, and this is Dan Levy. He serves a really strange and frustrating role in this story. He is, for almost all intents and purposes, until much later in the movie, the only character in this film who will give actual voice to our frustrations as an audience with Harper and the way she treats Abby. I think Clea and her co-writer knew that they needed a character to do this, a character who would be on Abby's side, but our first real introduction to this guy includes him going off on a whole speech about how Abby is being archaic and patriarchal when she announces her intention to propose to Harper. So, complaint number two here, we're getting to him kind of fast at the beginning. The Dan Levy character is just really weirdly and frustratingly deployed, I think. So, this introduction to Dan Levy's character, I mean, whatever, this is fine. I'm not going to pretend like his little anti marriage speech is not a way that some gay people talk about the institution of marriage, though it is kind of strange to hear from a character who's a guy and not one who's a woman. It also kind of reminds me of In Twilight, another Kristen Stewart project, though I think this is mostly just in the books, when Bella has like a half-hearted protest against the concept of marriage, but then eventually goes along with it. There's something so insecure to me whenever this comes up in a narrative, as though the author of a work where you know that a marriage is going to happen just cannot bear to imagine you not knowing that they know that some people have issues with marriage as an institution. But that's not the only reason that I kind of dislike it. I dislike it because what this does is kind of put us at odds with what should be the only character who is truly on Abby's side, which then by extension makes us see his well-reasoned hesitations with what's to come in a more critical light than we should. And what's to come it's really bad. Interpersonally, in terms of the way Abby is about to be treated for the whole rest of the movie. It's so bad, in fact, that even Dan Levy's line at the beginning of the anti-marriage speech about how Harper and Abby have a perfect relationship is not remotely convincing to me, which is really the core of all of my issues with this movie, but I didn't number that. The one moment that we got with Harper where she seemed actually particularly invested in her relationship with Abby was right before she woke up and changed her mind about it. Maybe I am supposed to take the ugly, ugly, really ugly postcard style art from the opening credits and assume that she is usually great. But in terms of the actual movie, Harper comes across in her very introduction as though she is very hot and cold on Abby. And the cold isn't really explained until they're already in the car on the way to her family's house for the holidays, after Abby has already gone to the pains to get somebody else to cover for her during her pet sitting job. So we will circle back to Dan Levy, the frustratingly utilized pet sitter literary agent bestie, next time he becomes relevant. But he's basically there to tell us, I think correctly, that Abby should not propose to Harper, but to tell us that with clearly wrong reasoning, so that we don't make the mistake of taking that seriously. Alright, I'm being really negative. I feel like I should say something nice. I like Dan Levy. I enjoy it when he's around. It's also nice that Abby's character has a gay friend and a natural connection with the other queer character we will meet later on, who sometimes serves the same critical of this relationship role. I think that is a nice and realistic thing to see in a gay movie. Often in movies, characters like me are shunted off into being the only queer person in a group of friends, when my personal experience is that it's much more common for me to have only one or two straight people total in my friend group. Back to the plot here. Like I said, Harper finally unveils to Abby why she had gotten so weird about the invitation that morning once they are in her car and most of the way to her parents' house. Harper is not, in fact, out to her parents like she told Abby. And it's not even just that she allowed Abby to assume that she was out. Harper outright straight up lied. Like, she told Abby a fake story about coming out and them being happy and accepting. And I don't think that being in the closet counts as lying, but I do think that this that she said to Abby absolutely 100% counts as lying. Making this be an actual outright lie that she orchestrated and told, and not just a lie of omission, is such a bad writing choice if I am meant to ever root for this relationship. Especially because by the time Harper is coming clean about this lie, she's already pressuring Abby not only into pretending not to date, but into pretending to be straight in front of her parents. And in theory, that's where the comedy should be coming from in this movie, from Kristen Stewart trying and failing to act heterosexual. There is a funny bit where Dan Levy asks if Harper's parents have ever seen a lesbian before when Abby tells him that they believe that she's straight. But this is really underutilized throughout the film, honestly, because instead they made this weird little claustrophobic horror movie. Back home, Harper is not out to her parents, and they are near obsessively trying to set her back up with her high school boyfriend. They're very obsessively trying to maintain the father's public image well enough for him to win an upcoming election and become the mayor, which means the whole family is under scrutiny, and Harper is afraid to come out before the holiday is over. I think I could, in a different movie, in a better movie, be okay with this. Most especially, I think, if Harper were actually our main character here and not Abby. Those themes I mentioned I would be interested in earlier, I do find them all really compelling. The trauma of the closet, how hard it is to be loved conditionally by your family. That's really interesting, and there's clearly a lot of meat on those bones. We get to learn some about Harper. She's the clear favorite of her parents' three daughters, and it's made painfully obvious how conditional that is, with both of her parents clearly demonstrating why she is so afraid of falling out of her parents' favor. That's actually pretty interesting, you would think, but the movie made a critical mistake, in my opinion, by having Abby so firmly as our lead and not Harper. Abby is the one we hold with, the one who is our point of view character into this fucked up family dynamic. And Abby is an infinitely more likably written character. Something I know I'm not the only one to come away from the movie thinking, because, again, all the reviews of this movie I've read. And when I say Abby is more likable, I'm not trying to slight Mackenzie Davis. I think a similar portrayal of this same character, but written with a script that was a little more thoughtful about some of the nuances of this character and her development, could have worked. But in the movie we got, with the runtime and the perspective limited to what we got, it just feels like it's a movie about our protagonist Abby having a really, really remarkably shitty girlfriend. More on that later, like most of my script is about that, but I have more complaints. Like, okay, remember I said Harper has two sisters who have fallen out of favor with their parents? And also remember how I complained about how the movie is not very funny? Complaint number 3, hey, what's the joke with the neurodivergent sister? A huge chunk of the attempted humor in this movie just comes from one of Harper's sisters being weird, mostly just overly enthusiastic, though there are also references made to her biting in preschool. Really, she just comes across as neurodivergent. And not only do I not really find this as bountiful a source of comedy as the writers seemed to, but it makes all the other characters who are constantly annoyed with and snapping at and ignoring Jane come across really, really poorly. There's also this weird have your mean joke cake and eat it too situation going on with this character, where after about an hour of seeing everyone be really mean to her in a way that you're kind of meant to be laughing at, she snaps and stands up for herself at last, saying that she would like to be included in the family dysfunction. I felt like I was both meant to enjoy the comedy punching down at her, but then also appreciate seeing her stand up for herself when they need each of the sisters to have some big shouty reveal at the end. Or maybe they wanted me to feel bad for having laughed at her. It just doesn't work for me. Exactly one thing about this character works for me, and it's that she has a big extended fantasy universe she has been writing for years, and the Dan Levy literary agent character gets her a book deal and then sits down next to her at book signings in the flash forward. I like that. I don't love the rest of how she was handled, though I did find her the most likable of Harper's family by a long shot. Other than the picking on the autistic coded sister parts, a lot of the comedy comes from this pointless runtime bloat with some mall cops. Harper's niece sneaks a fancy necklace into Abby's purse at the mall, and we end up with an overlong and under-comedic scene with two mall security guards. This leads Abby to be uninvited from the dinner she was supposed to attend with the family that night, and while she is out alone, she runs into Riley. Here's the thing. You already know complaint number 4. Complaint number 4 has been pretty much everybody's take since the weekend this movie came out. I feel there are people who know this complaint about the movie who have never even watched it. Complaint number 4. She should have run away with Riley. I'm sorry to Clea Duvall, who I know disagrees with me, but Abby should have run away with Riley. Riley, played by Aubrey Plaza, is the best part of this movie and the least well utilized. I'm not really joking about thinking they should have ended up together, not just because Aubrey and Kristen have infinitely better chemistry than Kristen and Mackenzie do, but also because, come on, that's classic rom-com fodder, is it not? Someone has a shitty and unappreciative partner, and then they realize that the grass is greener with someone they met in their hometown or whatever Christmassy suburb they traveled to for the movie. It's such an obvious route this movie could have taken that part of me really has to wonder if the creators thought that it would be subversive to ignore that opportunity and force a happily ever after for the toxic couple instead. But me, I'm firmly team Abby and Riley should have run away together. Riley is Harper's ex-girlfriend, and she can relate to Abby being forced into acting closeted while being in a relationship with Harper. Abby and Riley go to a gay bar where a Christmas-themed drag show is happening and unpack that a bit. And here in this scene, while at this point in the film we have still gotten pretty much nothing likable or forgivable from Harper, we learn the backstory to their relationship. Not only did Riley and Harper date secretly as teenagers, but when Harper's friends learned about this relationship, Harper got herself away from any heat by outing Riley and only Riley, framing her as somebody who was obsessed with her and wouldn't leave her alone, and not as her girlfriend. Genuinely heartbreaking stuff. And the thing is, Aubrey Plaza fucking kills it in this role. That sounds like an actual realistic trauma a gay woman would have from her experience being closeted and dating while in the closet. It is so sympathetic, and it's even something I could almost understand Harper's side of. Harper, too, is experiencing the trauma of the closet. But learning about this after I have already seen Harper straight up lie in order to manipulate Abby into believing what she wanted her to, continuing their relationship for months with a lie rather than just not bringing up whether or not she came out, and then engineering an entire situation where she gets to forcibly closet her girlfriend for her own benefit, even though Abby was already willing to stay home and pet sit over Christmas. I'm forced to just sit here thinking, okay, so Harper still has the level of emotional maturity she had when she was a cruel, horrible teenager. How am I possibly meant to root for that? How am I to do anything watching this movie other than be desperate for Abby and Riley to run away together? And also maybe be really romantic and touchy at the big party in front of Harper to boot, just to get to her. There is not enough of anything about Harper that isn't fully awful that allows me to have the kind of empathy I want to have here for this character. Okay, sure, Harper snuck down into Abby's basement bedroom one night and then immediately said they shouldn't have done that the next morning when they almost got caught. I should extrapolate an entire loving relationship out of that and one sext she sent from upstairs, I guess. After this scene where we meet up with Riley, I do like the contrast between the warm, cozy energy of the gay bar and the crowded, coolly lit straight bar Abby leaves to meet Harper in with her straight friends. And even just with what those visual differences convey, I don't understand how these are all the parts of a movie that ends the way that this movie ends. Abby and Riley should simply have run away together. That would have been the most obvious and romantic thing to happen in this movie, and it's also an extremely lesbian thing to date your ex's ex. It's not even like this wouldn't be realistic. And I've already been talking about this, but it is time. This needs to be on the list. Complaint number 5. With all of this backstory and now story in mind, Harper is impossible to like. After spending all night out with her ex-boyfriend and not replying to her girlfriend's texts, Harper complains about feeling suffocated by Abby, as if this entire thing isn't something that Harper herself fucking orchestrated, and they have a fight. And once again, I have to say, this is without us having pretty much any time to settle into the idea that this relationship is good or happy or ever healthy and not exactly like this all the time. Again, maybe the idea is that the opening credit montage was going to afford more goodwill towards this relationship than it does, but fuck. They just did such a frustrating job writing it. There is nothing to root for, nothing to hold on to, and I am now armed with the knowledge that Harper has, in fact, apparently just always been like this. Abby gets to have a phone call where she vents some of these frustrations to Dan Levy, who should be on her side here, but who just tells her that he needs to think about it when she asks what she should do. But then that leads us to more of the best part of the movie, the parts where Riley and Abby are hanging out, so I'm not that mad about the contrivance. But then Harper sees Riley and Abby hanging out, and she has the gall to be jealous, as though she didn't just spend an entire night out with her ex-boyfriend ignoring her girlfriend. It is like they intentionally wanted to make a character I would not be able to root for. Like, it is infuriating to me when we see Harper get jealous. And it was here, paused an hour into the movie, assembling my thoughts and dreading unpausing to finish watching the movie, that I started to get really offended on behalf of Harper. Because, don't get me wrong, I hate her, but I don't want to, and I shouldn't have to. This is not a movie that needed to have a villain, and maybe Clea Duvall thinks that it didn't. Maybe she and her co-writer think that they did a better job with this movie than they did, and that they made it clear that the true villain is the closet, but Harper is the villain of this movie. Harper is the roadblock between the Aubrey Plaza-Kristen Stewart relationship we all wanted, and I think frankly deserved. More than that, Harper is the one who betrayed Riley, and who, in my opinion, betrayed Abby by inventing an entire fiction about being out to supportive parents and then dropping the false pretenses only when they were already on the way to see her family, and after Abby had repeatedly said that she did not mind staying home for Christmas because she doesn't like celebrating the holiday. I am given pretty much nothing to defend Harper based on. The best I can come up with is that before he started going on and on about marriage being a patriarchal institution, Dan Levy's character said that Abby and Harper have the perfect relationship. And I get that you can't entirely show not tell that, but they definitely could have done a better job at both telling and showing. It probably doesn't sound like it because I just said that I hate her, but I want very badly to have empathy for this character, for the idea of an examination of the trauma of the closet, of the way someone panicking not to be outed themselves could betray the trust of the person they were with, what that dynamic looks like, even how to move on from that dynamic. But Harper, being this grown woman who is still in the exact same place she was in as a teenager, is a really bitter pill to swallow when there's so much nothing in place to make it go down any smoother. I understand they wanted this character to be flawed, and far be it from me to begrudge a woman her right to be flawed. I love that shit, usually, but I love that shit when it's done with a little bit more balance. And again, I think if Harper were our main character here and not our love interest, I might feel differently. I believe Mackenzie did the best she could with what she was given, but I think the screenwriters of this movie did a truly god-awful job at bearing this character out. Harper is a pile of insecurities. She is a liar, a bad partner, she's desperate for her father's approval, she's willing to lie for the sake of her own self-preservation, even at the outright detriment of the people she loves. She is competitive with her sister in a way that makes her extremely childlike and immature. She is steeped in the dysfunction of her family, and they forgot to do anything else with her other than those things. They forgot to give me a reason to root for her, to believe that she's being anything other than manipulative all of the times when she apologizes to Abby and then fails to see what she's putting her through or how she is behaving. And I'm kind of offended on Harper's behalf, because this character could have been so much more interesting, so much easier for me to engage with if they had just given me something, anything to latch onto. I know that she's a writer, but only because I know that her father really liked a recent article she published. I know that she's in what one character one time called the perfect relationship in a throwaway line. And I know that in that relationship, she treats her partner like garbage. That's the extent of what I know about this character, other than that she is closeted, and I just really hate it. I would love to be able to defend Harper, but I feel like what she needs to be defended from, first and foremost, is a lack of skill in the writers who created her and who positioned her where they did in the story. If Harper was our point of view character, maybe we would have had the breathing room for this movie to make her a little bit more likable, but if we look at this as a movie about Abby, which it is, she's very much our point of view character, there's a pretty clear villain in it, and it is Harper. Alright, I'm speeding through some of the end here, because I've already told you the parts about the neurodivergent sister wanting to be part of the big shouty revelations at the end, so let's get there. Dan Levy, having thought about what to do, shows up and pretends to be Abby's ex-boyfriend at the Christmas party. Abby, for a brief moment that feels so fucking good, and should have been the end of the movie, tells Harper it is over. and dumps her in the middle of the party. Abby goes downstairs to pack her things. Harper follows her and they fight, with Abby saying how painful it is for the person she loves to hide her, and then being told Harper isn't hiding Abby, she's hiding herself. Then she goes on a speech about all the daddy issues and being expected to be perfect stuff that I was able to scrape together as the closest thing to characterization that she was granted, and it becomes clear that we are, in fact, expected to be able to find all of that more than enough to explain why she is the way she is and why it's okay for her to treat Abby the way she does. I think possibly, maybe if we had seen what Harper is hiding when she says she's hiding herself, that this would hit more. Maybe if we got to know Harper as a person when she is not acting for her parents' approval. But if all I have to go on is the screen time of the movie and not all of the inferences I'm supposed to make, this doesn't hit at all. It just makes me roll my eyes. And again, it's not even the performance. She's good and she seems realistically upset. She just also is a character I find it impossible to actually meaningfully relate to because there are so many walls up between me and her, and I hate her. Abby doesn't hate her, though. This is briefly good enough for Abby, and they kiss after this speech about how Harper has to be competitive with her sisters for her parents' affection, but also doesn't want to lose her girlfriend. And, okay, actually, you know what? Let me add another complaint to the list. It is not just that Harper is impossible to like, it's that they did a bad job writing her. I know I've already said that, but I need it to be its own point. I read a couple of the apparently bunch of interviews Clea Duvall did after the movie was released where she defended having Abby and Harper stay together. And something she said about Harper has been really sticking with me, and not in a way that gives me an ability to say anything good about the screenwriting here, unfortunately. The interviewer brought up how Clea had previously said that Harper's struggle with going home and closeting herself was the hardest part of the whole movie for this variety piece, and Clea said, "It's humanizing this experience that I think not a lot of people have seen unless they have been through it. You're meeting her on the worst 4 days of her life, when she is not herself. It was challenging in writing her, but also even when we were working with wardrobe, because she's not going to go home in her regular clothes, because her mom will pick those apart. She is trying to emulate the person her parents want her to be. Being able to get all the nuances and make it feel authentic and make it feel grounded, it's challenging. She's wearing a huge coat in the opening scene, but her wardrobe is more vintage, less fitted. It's more of the real Harper. And then imagining her getting ready, packing her suitcase, and thinking, what is my mom not going to give me a hard time about? Tipper even buys Harper a dress that looks identical to a dress that Tipper wears in the movie. Her parents are constantly trying to subtly and not so subtly turn her into the person that they want her to be. So she's looking at everything through that lens. I think that is a very real thing. Whether you're queer or not, parents who are sort of curating their children at all times is really suffocating. And I just... Okay, you didn't have to only write the worst 4 days, though. Like, you could have given us more. You could have given us more of who she is. Who the real Harper is not conveyed well at all in the movie. Something it sounds like Clea even kind of knows, referencing that she is covered up in a big coat in the opening scene. Who Harper really is when she's not concealing herself is apparently known only to the people who worked on and wrote this movie. That's what I mean about the movie not doing a good job conveying what it means to convey. It did not give me any good way to grasp how differently these 4 days were making Harper behave than anything in the rest of her life. It didn't even actually give me a good look at the clothes that she wears when she's not around her family. I don't know what her life at home with Abby is like. I don't know if she's friends with Dan Levy or if he's only friends with Abby. I don't know if Harper has queer friends. I don't know if the straight friends she has back home are her primary contacts other than Abby. I don't know. I don't know anything about her, and I fear that it's because the movie was not written with quite enough skill to tell me. It didn't trust that the character who is part of the dysfunctional family the movie wants to examine could be our point of view character, and so the character the director seems to be the most interested in is framed with this frustratingly distant lens the entire time. I think that's part of why this movie is such a letdown. It really could have been so much better. The sister Harper is most competitive with walks in on this all is forgiven kiss between the couple and decides to out Harper to their parents. And then they all very conveniently walk in on the sister's husband making out with the donor they've all been trying to impress for the whole movie. The sisters get into a big, protracted physical fight, I guess because it's supposed to be funny, and then Sloane outs her sister in front of the whole party. Anyway, even with their mutually assured destruction. Harper panics, immediately says her sister is lying, and Abby leaves, and this is when we get that whole thing where the neurodivergent character finally stands up for herself, but I already talked about that earlier. Abby and Dan Levy go outside, and we get this lore drop that it's actually not just that Abby didn't care about Christmas, but that she didn't want to acknowledge it because she had so many Christmas memories with her dead parents. This is honestly pretty well telegraphed in the movie. I think anybody would have pieced it together by now from how often her dead parents are mentioned in the movie, but it gets treated like an emotional reveal here. Then she says that she thought maybe it would be different this year to do Christmas with Harper and her family, but then she says she thinks she needs to admit that Harper doesn't love her as much as Abby thought she did. And if you'll allow me to circle back to the Dan Levy is weirdly deployed point here, Dan Levy jumps in to comfort Abby and says that Harper not coming out to her parents has nothing to do with Abby, which is true. But what's also true is Harper lied to Abby, invented an entire story about coming out that never happened, manipulated her into already being on the way before dropping that she was asking her to closet, treated her like shit the whole time they were there, and put her in incredibly uncomfortable positions, all for the sake of Harper's own comfort. And I gotta say, that to me does in fact sound like somebody who doesn't love Abby as much as Abby thought loved her. And it has nothing to do with being closeted with her parents. It has to do with how she's navigating her other relationships, her relationship with Abby. There is no one big closet. Coming out is never a one and done situation, and many queer people are only conditionally out, only out in certain circles, not interested in coming out to their parents whatsoever. That's normal and natural and part of the heteronormative and homophobic society we live in. But it's also not a pass to treat your partner however you feel like and then be exempt from any of the emotional consequences of that, which is kind of how it's treated in this movie. I talked about this before in my review of Lady Bird, but I am just struck by how there is functionally no difference between not loving someone and not showing somebody that you love them. Nobody else is inside your head, and nobody should be asked to intuit love into actions that are identical to those of somebody who doesn't love you at all. And it's weird that this is kind of, with the exception of Riley being able to relate to Abby's experience, the only character who we've seen be a little bit critical of how Harper was treating her responds to the statement this way, rather than responding to anything else Abby said in this little spiel. Because he has to get us back onto the forgiveness track. This is a movie about forgiveness. He has to remind Abby of how willing she was to give Harper the closet pass just before all of this. So that's what he does, because the character is weirdly deployed. In what kind of feels like the thesis scene of the movie, Dan Levy asks Abby to recall her happy memory coming out to her parents and then contrasts it with his own. He uses this to build empathy for Harper with a whole speech about how hard it is to come out, how scary it is, and how irreversible it is. And to be honest, the music in this scene does a lot of heavy lifting, I think, to make it emotional. Dan tells her that just because Harper is not ready now doesn't mean that she never will be, and doesn't mean that she doesn't love Abby. Abby replies that she just wants to be with somebody who is ready, and Dan Levy just kind of gives an acknowledging hum and hugs her. I don't know if this is how I would handle it if it were my friend, but I didn't write Schitt's Creek, what do I know? The character's name is John, I think. I just thought it was funnier to put Dan Levy in my notes, so I did. Inside, Riley comes to check on Harper after the party, and Harper says, "I'm so sorry," and they shake hands, and Riley tells Harper that Abby is a really good one and leaves, and Harper seems to be absolved of her wrongdoing in this, because she finally said she was sorry, though not for what. The dad yells at his daughters, accuses Sloane of making up lies about her sister, and Harper admits that she's gay and that she is in love with Abby when Abby comes back in to get her stuff. Harper puts together that she let herself hurt Riley because she was so scared of not being who her parents wanted her to be, and says that she can't do that to Abby, which is frustrating to me. She speaks as if she has not already hurt Abby. She speaks as though she has not already been broken up with. But, this is all Abby said she wanted, so they kind of do have to stay together. It just doesn't immediately take. They give you the false hope that maybe she's going to end the movie alone, as she should have, and as Clea Duvall apparently didn't even consider until after the movie was out and that Variety interviewer asked her about it. So the sister with the cheating husband announces that she's getting a divorce, kind of like in solidarity with having just outed her sister, and now her sister is coming out. And the neurodivergent sister Jane also comes to stand with her sisters, saying she doesn't have any secrets but is an ally. And the dad storms off angrily, and Abby announces she's going to go. And Harper acts all confused that this didn't fix things as easily as her apology handshake with Riley fixed things, because Harper is insufferable. Abby tells her that it is too late, and we get a long shot on Harper realizing that perhaps maybe her actions and the way she treats other people has consequences. Movie could have ended here. Movie should have ended with Abby leaving and calling Riley, but alas, it doesn't. The mom comes and talks to the dad about how they care too much about appearances and their daughters have been struggling without being able to talk to them about it. Meanwhile, the sisters all bond in the kitchen and make up from their fight earlier, and the mom comes out to tell them that dad just needs a little bit of time. Harper catches up with and tracks down Abby and Dan Levy at a gas station on their way out, and Harper gives a whole speech about how Abby is her family, and Harper wishes she could undo everything and that she won't hurt Abby like this again. So I guess at least finally acknowledging that she has in fact already hurt her. Harper wants to spend her whole life making it up to her so they can build a life together, and she doesn't care what her parents think. She only needs Abby, and Dan Levy encourages Abby to get back together with her, so she does. Even though, the entire movie started with Harper saying a bunch of shit that she didn't mean when she thought it through. So there's I have no reason to believe I guess unless coming out was like a magical fix it, but I I I don't trust her. Abby does though. Abby gets back together with her. They make out in the gas station parking lot. We cut to the next morning, which is all the time the dad needed, apparently. Harper's dad apologizes, says all he wants is for his daughters to be happy, and he sunk almost all of their money into the mayor campaign because he wanted them to be proud of him. And it's dumb. I'm sorry. It's dumb. And this politics plot line is pretty toothless. Like, we don't know what his platform is really. I think it kind of sounds like he's a little bit like Christian and conservative, but that's not like outright said. But like it's kind of implied. And he's told that the backer will back him if his daughter can adopt a don't ask, don't tell policy about her sexuality, and he says no, but that still sounds like this man's going to be a Republican. That's its own problem. Yet another movie that should have been about estrangement, I think. Anyway, we get slow motion montage of the family spending the holiday together. They take a family picture, including Abby in it. And also, it appears that Abby proposes to Harper that same Christmas. Like, Harper is wearing the ring. Infuriating to me. Bare minimum, if they were going to stay together, Abby should have been the one who got proposed to, and it should have happened much later. We even see them later when we get a year flash forward to Jane reading her novel to a packed auditorium. It's not like there wasn't some kind of opportunity to demonstrate that Harper would have put actual effort toward growing and changing. But I guess all it took was coming out to her family and also having them be surprisingly chill about it, and now everything's fine. And I'm meant to view this as a heartwarming Christmas story, and not as a horror movie about being forced to closet for the sake of and then assimilate into your girlfriend's dysfunctional ass family with a Republican politician in it. I guess because we see them go watch It's a Wonderful Life the next year instead of having a big stressful party, that I am meant to believe that just the same way that Harper suddenly stopped being a terrible, awful partner, the family stopped being dysfunctional and stressy and started being healthy and happy. And listen, I get it's a movie, a Christmas movie of all movies, a sappy holiday thing where everything is set right at the end or whatever. But that's really not how these sorts of family dynamics would resolve and play out. And it's so rushed and feels so unearned on every front that it doesn't even feel like wish fulfillment. It just feels cheap and frustrating. And I mentioned Lady Bird earlier, but my seventh and final complaint here is that this movie is difficult to criticize because of what I'm calling the Lady Bird effect. It is a movie that is clearly deeply personal to its director, and also a movie that happens to have some pretty opposite emotional beats to ones that I would personally resonate with. It's a movie that I think at least some of my audience might be a little bit frustrated I didn't go a little bit easier on. I do know that this movie and what it says about closeting and the way it treats Harper, and probably even why Harper seems to maybe be the favored character of the director, comes from somewhere very personal and real. It does make me offer a level of grace to this movie. Like I said in the beginning of this video, and even though I have just complained about it for most of an hour, I am happy this movie exists. I'm happy it was made. I'm happy for the people who love it. I just also don't think it's executed well. I don't think it makes me root for Harper and Abby, not as a relationship and not even really as individuals. I think it disperses its compassion unevenly. I don't think it sits at all with the fact that Harper was asking Abby to be in a traumatic situation. And you know what? Even my therapist said this movie was a bummer, so it's not just me and the handful of negative reviews I read who also saw what I saw in this movie. But what did you see when you watched it? Did you watch it? Have you rewatched it since the first time you saw it? And did your opinion change? I was really hoping that I would enjoy it a lot more on my second watch, but that was sure not my experience. I think perhaps the happiest thing about this season is that I don't have to watch this movie again. Thank you for watching. Merry whatever you celebrate, or happy whatever day this is if you don't. Thank you again to Balessa for sponsoring this video. Thank you also to my lovely Patreon friends, a few whose names you can see on the screen right now. Patreon is a great way to help support me financially. You get a couple of extra videos from me every month and get to know what's coming next. Thank you also to my lovely YouTube channel members, and to everyone who has sent me a one-off donation via coffee, super thanks, or super chats. It makes such a huge difference. I really appreciate it. I'll be back soon. I have more gay Christmas movies I want to talk about. I love you. I hope to see you then. Bye.